Welcome back to the Georgia Show. You know, Bill, you were talking before the show that we can't even keep up with everything. How's the audience going to keep up with this, except for listening to us?
I don't know. I mean, that's it's one of the biggest challenges right now, and I hear it from a lot of folks. They don't know what to look at because there's so much. There's, the Comey thing, and there's the Russian envoy thing, and there's, what's going on in the Middle East, and what does it all mean?
What does
And
it all mean? We're going to dig into that, and we're going to make you smarter than anyone else in your circle of trust. So I want to give a shout out to whatfinger.com. Give them a check out once you check out cdm.press and the Georgia Record, of course. But if you're looking for a good aggregator site, they post a lot of our content, and we really appreciate that. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. Where are we going to start, Bill? How's the show going to go?
Well, let's give some alms to our sponsors as we get going here, because it's going to be tight today. Like I said, we're going to talk about some things that I think are very important. I think if we compare what we know today to what we knew or thought we knew 2, 3, 4 years ago, we would find that there are vast differences, and I think they're going to get even more important. We're going to talk a little bit about what that may mean. We're going to talk about some of the things going on internationally. We'll talk about some things that are going on in Washington and around the country that I think may be different than people are imagining, or at least they need a new level of understanding about what they're saying. And then get into some stuff here in Georgia and perhaps a bit more.
So before we get started, we need your help. If you haven't done it already, go to my.cdm.press. That's my.cdm.press and sign up for our no ad subscriptions. You get access to all of our content with no ads. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. A lot of people just pay the $100, get it out of the way, and you're done for the year. And you don't get any pop-ups. You don't get any banner ads, nothing when you're running through all of our sites. You log in once and you get to go to Ukraine, to the Middle East, to the Balkans, to Montana, to Colorado, to Georgia, to the military, CDM Espanol, all of it, and with no ads. So people love that. We need you to please do that if you haven't done already, because we're ramping up the expenses here as we grow. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Bill, and we'll get going.
Okay. All right. So to kick us off, let's see. Can you take down CDM Press, please?
Yeah, sorry about that.
To kick us off, here's kind of the theme that I want you to keep in mind for this show. It comes from Sun Tzu's The Art of War. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. And if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. The reason we brought that up is I would make the argument that in many ways, I think we are getting a new understanding of who our enemy or enemies may be. And it may be different than we would have assumed 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe we are getting a new notion and understanding about ourselves. And by ourselves, I mean those that we trust the most or have trusted the most. The folks in agencies like the FBI, the CIA, and who they were, what they did over the past years, maybe many years, that was perhaps not in our best interest. We have to understand that. We've got to be willing to understand it, learn it, face it, in order to understand what to do and how to interpret what we see going forward. Does that ring true?
It does. I think we have to also learn how to spot those that may not be who they say they are. We've gotten pretty good at that because we've been infiltrated many, many times, and we can spot it. And usually it's because they approach you first. That's one of the big tells right there. If they approach you to get across a narrative or to get access to something or whatever, instead of you offering it, that to me is one of the big tells. By the way, I just wanted to say, I forgot to mention, we're not paid by anyone. We're not paid by Russia. We're not paid by any foreign country. We're not paid by any internal lobby. We're paid by our sponsors and our subscribers, and that's it. So what you're getting here is the unvarnished truth, and we'll talk about how we've been right on a lot and really out front and told the truth when others wouldn't in a minute. But back to you.
That's right. It's also important, I think, Todd, to point out that for the sponsors that need vetting, you and the team have vetted them quite carefully to make sure that what we think is in fact the case.
That's correct. We're not just picking anybody who will pay us. We don't do that.
Okay. All right. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about something international to begin here. Let's take a look at this. The gentleman posted this is Kirill Dmitriev. Mr. Dmitriev is a special envoy and what I understand to be a trusted confidant of Putin in Russia. Now, that may give us a start, may give some people a start. But look at what he posted. And this came out yesterday, about just afternoon. Breaking, CIA just declassified documents that revealed that then Vice President Biden intervened to suppress an internal report exposing alleged corruption by his family in Ukraine and reportedly pressured to remove a Ukrainian official who had uncovered such wrongdoing. Who released it? CIA Director John Ratcliffe. And you can see his release on X yesterday, just before, about 8 hours before Mr. Dmitriev posted his. So very interesting. If you look at this and you look up on X, you can actually download the full report that was released. We're going to focus on a couple key things in it. But more importantly, think about the notion that a key confidant of Putin is one of the ones pointing to this and saying, this is important. And if you recall, we have looked at him in the past to check to make sure, is this really the gentleman he claims to be? And indeed, it does appear so. This is his account on X. And in fact, we're going to show you something toward the end of this conversation that will again confirm this. So think about this for a minute. Again, why is he weighing in and apparently trying to help us understand something that perhaps we will decide is very important to understand? Here's another thing that I found just before airtime that I think sheds a bit of light on who this gentleman is. This goes back to April 19th. And in this, he posts, today Christians across the world, Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox, celebrate the resurrection together. A rare and beautiful moment of unity in faith, hope, and love. May it inspire us to walk closer together. Pretty interesting post for a special envoy who, in fact, has been here in the U.S.
I was going to say he came to D.C. He's a financial guy.
He is. Yeah. He is CEO of one of their financial and economic development groups, and again, a close confidant of Putin. So the reason I share this is because we have, in past weeks, we've talked carefully and repeatedly about the attacks, if you will, on Christianity going on around the world. And yet here's a gentleman standing up in favor and support of Christianity. Also note the date, April 19th. What was that date in history? Do we remember?
No, what's April 19th?
April 19th is the day that the British attacked Lexington and Concord in 1775.
Interesting.
Coincidence? Yeah, maybe. Okay. Following the post we just showed you from Mr. Dmitriev, he posted this: Biden provoked the war in Ukraine to cover up his family's corruption. The truth is coming out and justice must follow. And then he is responding to his own post about an hour before.
I think maybe here's sorry to interrupt you, a good time to jump in on just something we posted 6 years ago.
Sure.
I want to highlight how early CDM is. Let me bring this up here. If you go to cdm.press on the top menu, I'm just going to bring that on. And then you go to the far right top menu, second line, Ukraine files. Here's a bunch of stuff that we put out a long time ago. And if you go to the far right, well, the first article is about corruption in Ukraine and how we found all that. A lot of information on the Ukrainians that came and tried to warn DOJ of what was going on. But also this article, which was part of the DNI report that was just released, that Poroshenko, the former president, was paid $100 million by Burisma to shut down the investigation. So we reported this in 2019. This article was originally published October 18th, 2019. And we got a lot of calls from some very important people about this. And then we were massively attacked and deplatformed. Lost 500,000 followers, debanked 5 times, violence, firebombs, tracking family members, all kind of stuff that hasn't been good. But we were early and we were right. And I just want to highlight that, Bill, that that's why you come to CDM is we're not paid by anybody and we can put stuff out like that.
That's great. That's great. All right, let me go ahead and put this back up and we'll continue on. So here's another view. This is Mr. Dmitriev on the left and of course Biden on the right. Same quote from the last thing, and this was picked up by Bricks News. So this dialogue, if you will, from Mr. Dmitriev has been picked up really all around the world. Folks are paying attention to this because it means something to have a Russian high-ranking official, especially in his position, appearing to aid understanding regarding what's going on with Biden. Here is Benny Johnson, one of the Washington correspondents and the national correspondent, and he's highlighting the actual documents that were released by DNI John Ratcliffe. Here's his quote: "Newly declassified records revealed that Ukrainian officials viewed the Biden family's business dealings as evidence of a double standard within the United States government toward matters of corruption and political power." The Ukrainian officials, even the good guys, were looking at us like, wait a minute, the U.S. has got a double standard. Some of those are bad guys. He goes on, an email from former DNI James Clapper notes that Vice President Biden requested the intelligence report on these concerns not be disseminated. And let's go to excerpts from the actual releases from John Ratcliffe. And you can read the top one. And again, it underscores that the officials viewed the alleged ties of U.S. Vice President's family to corruption in Ukraine as evidence of a double standard, meaning they thought we were partly bad guys. And indeed, there were some apparently stuck within the government. Okay. One of the, know yourself things in all of this. Down at the bottom, you can see, and this is from Clapper at the time, reporting a conversation apparently that he had with the NSA and with the VP at that time, Biden. "Good morning. I just spoke with VP and NSA, and he," meaning the VP, "would strongly prefer the report not be disseminated. He didn't want people to know what Ukraine knew." Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Many will recall what we're going to show next. This is where Biden, I'll call it stupidly, brags about his ability to manipulate Poroshenko and others, and he used $1 billion loan guarantee to do so. Let's look at this.
Not but it just happened to be that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones, so I got Ukraine, and I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, "No," I said, "I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion." They said, "You have no authority. You're not the president." The president said. I said, "Call him." I said, "I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion." I said, "You're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here." And I think it was 6 hours. I said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money." Well, son of a bitch, got fired.
So what did he just say? He threatened not to give the loan guarantee. And why? Because they were investigating both Burisma through the state prosecutor. They were investigating Burisma, and as part of Burisma, his son, Hunter Biden.
Yep.
And by extension, perhaps himself. So again, our eyes are being drawn to this by a special envoy from Russia saying this is important. The next thing he says is going to hit some people as, oh gosh, where are we going now? But I'm going to ask for your indulgence a little bit, and I'll show you why I think this may be another signal in all of this. Here was his next post after the first two that we said. He put this out at 1:28 p.m. Yesterday afternoon. It says, drop 4822 was published on this date exactly 5 years ago. Now, what does he mean by drop 4822? Well, he is referring to what's known as a Q drop. And you can see it here. This is from another one of the folks that's been tracking this internationally. And they put up the video and they put up the Mr. Dmitriev's note, and they actually have the Q drop. Let me zoom in on it so you can read it. And it becomes even more interesting when you begin to think about the dates. Yesterday was October 7th. Here's how it reads. What happens if Biden became POTUS, knowing he, through Hunter Plus One, took massive amounts of bribes to change, look the other way, U.S. policy towards Ukraine in favor of Ukraine? Would Ukraine own and control the White House? Well, it's an interesting question, but note that they're talking about Biden. What happens if he became POTUS? Look at the date, October 7th, 2020. When was the election in which Biden supposedly won? 27 days later. Interesting that speculation would be posted on October 7th, and then indeed Biden becomes president. And what did we see after that? Well, we saw a number of things, including hundreds of millions of dollars sent to Ukraine, much of which went with the accolades and the glee of Congress. Mm-hmm. We in the past have shown Congress took a vote on about $100 million package, as I recall. It ended up passing, and believe it or not, many of those in Congress were waving Ukrainian flags on the floor of Congress and had to be cautioned not to do so. It was improper to do so in Congress. Who would do that? When was the last time we saw Congress hold up American flags and wave them after a vote?
And when was it? How many times did Judge Duffy go to Ukraine during this period? I think 9 times.
I don't recall, but quite a number. Quite a number.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I didn't take the time, but the other thing to keep in mind is how many of our congressmen and senators and congresswomen went to Ukraine and bent the knee to Zelensky over the course of the beginning in the conflict. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Off the top of my head, Rich McCormick happened to be one, and we've got one of his favorite pictures, bending the knee to Zelensky during one of his trips. So many went, is the bottom line. How is this possible? Well, then later today, we had yet again another development. Representative Anna Paulina Luna from Florida announced that she had officially confirmed a meeting with Kirill Dmitriev, special envoy. She goes back through this, and she says some nice things about why it's important not to be enemies, but to be friends. Well, his actions so far appear darn friendly to me. And indeed, he responds to this note just about an hour before airtime and delivered, "Dear Congresswoman Luna, thank you for your courageous stand for peace and dialogue. The world depends on the U.S. and Russia listening, understanding each other, and working together to address global challenges. I look forward to our meeting and constructive discussion." Very interesting.
She's the one charged with releasing a lot of these withheld informational files on Epstein, et cetera, right? JFK.
She is part of the oversight group that would be doing that, and indeed promised to get a number of things out, and yet they still seem to be stuck behind walls of one type or another. So yes. So we're not sure. Again, part of the lesson under all of this is to not make a judgment that you cannot amend as you learn more about people. We would have 2 years ago and 4 years ago specifically, when we were being told that Russia was behind getting Trump elected or had attempted to interfere in our elections, we would have believed that. Many people did believe it. However, what we've learned now is that was an entirely created piece by factions within the government led by Obama, and yet had people from the FBI and the CIA and FISA warrants and everything else created to create a narrative that they could rely on. But it was false. But we would have believed it back then. Nowadays, we know better. That is a lesson for us to keep flexible in our understanding and watch what people do, not necessarily just what they say.
The consequences of their actions. Obama could speak very well, but the consequences were horrific. That's what I look at.
That's correct. That's a very good observation. Okay, let me see where we are here. All right, we're going to move on to another topic in just a moment. If we want to take a break, now would be a wonderful time.
Yeah, I want to just highlight real quick. If you're looking for good Christmas gifts, my book Currency, you can find it at historyofbooks.com or anywhere books are sold. I'll just read the back. Todd Wood's economic thriller Currency spans 3 centuries and includes tales of pirates and America's early leaders. Currency kept me curious until the very end, a unique page turner. That's from Bill Gertz, senior editor of the Washington Free Beacon. And another one, Currency combines history, finance, romance, and action into a timely and entertaining read on a subject that has serious economic and multinational implications. My wife and I both enjoyed reading it. That's from the Honorable David M. Walker, the former U.S. Comptroller General. So great book for the fire or at Christmas time, or on the plane or on the train or wherever, or it's kind of late for beach, and also Paying the Price, the untold story of the Iranian resistance. Real quick one from Laura Logan. Todd Wood has taken on one of the most successful disinformation operations of the Iranian regime, and in doing so exposed the Washington, D.C. press corps, which has failed the MEK and the people of Iran. For too long, the Iranian people have fought the regime mostly on their own and at great cost. This important book comes at a critical time for the opposition, which is growing from strength to strength, even in the streets run with their blood. This is from Laura Logan, award-winning journalist from 60 Minutes. So great ideas for that. Someone who has everything, who likes to read about geopolitics, history, historical fiction, and finance. So back to you, Bill.
Okay, very good. All right, let's move to this next. So earlier today, early this morning, Trump released this, and it is a letter that speaks to the federalization of Alabama National Guard troops back in 1963. Why was that done, and why is he posting that? Well, one, I believe, is to signify and provide evidence that this has been done, and has been done lawfully and appropriately when needed. The story behind this is in 63, the governor of Alabama, George Wallace, had blocked a couple of black students from entering the University of Alabama. It was known as the Stand in the Schoolhouse Door. It was done on June 11th. And President Kennedy at that time responded by federalizing the Alabama National Guard and leading to Wallace eventually stepping aside and allowing the students to register for classes. This was a pretty important step in desegregation. Again, why is he posting this? Well, we're gonna listen to a couple things that he had to say. Bear with me for just a moment while I bring those up. In the last few days. Now, you'll recall that last week, Pete Hegseth and President Trump addressed a group of military officials that had been brought into Quantico. And some of the things he said that day and some of the things that he said since, I think, are important for us to know and recall as the days go by. Let's go ahead. I'll pull this down and bring up one of the first things that he covered.
You in the room, we've brought back the fundamental principle that defending the homeland is the military's first and most important priority. That's what it is. Only in recent decades did politicians somehow come to believe that our job is to police the far reaches of Kenya and Somalia, while America is under invasion from within. We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least when they're wearing a uniform, you can take them out. These people don't have uniforms.
Okay. And then let's hear some further comments later in his speech.
Lincoln, Grover Cleveland, George Bush, and others all used the armed forces to keep domestic order and peace. Many of our leaders used the military to keep peace. Now they like to say, oh, you're not allowed to use the military. And you know what the people say? The people in those cities where they're being raped and shot and beat up, you know what they say? We love the military. You ever see where they interview the people on the street? I've never seen somebody say they don't, unless they're radical and paid off, because a lot of these insurrectionists are paid by, whether it's Soros or other people, but they're paid by the radical left. So today I want to thank every service member from general to private who has bravely helped us secure the nation's capital and make America safe for the American people. It's amazing. The whole world is watching.
Okay, so you heard several things there. Let's talk about them before I go and play the next piece. You talked about homeland. What is the homeland? Homeland is here. Homeland is America. And he mentions that we've come to believe that we have to be the policemen of the rest of the world, yet we never thought we'd have to protect our own country. But indeed, we appear to be facing something where there's been, I'll call it infiltration for the time being. We may choose another word in coming days and weeks, but there seems to be people working against the best interests of the country. And it's not just at the top now. We're seeing things all the way down to local level. I'm going to play something for you from Portland. You're going to watch police give advice to Antifa about how to avoid ICE.
It's okay. It's all right. Get them the fuck out of here. You don't want to listen. Real quick. We're trying something else. Real quick. So the judge granted the TRO. Hey, I'm the one who got stabbed in 2020 by you guys. So who can stand again? You ain't got the balls to do it, though. That's a death threat. You ain't got the balls to do it. That's a death threat. You ain't got the balls to do it, so keep yapping your mouth, okay? That's a death threat. Why don't you go arrest me? It's harder for the judge. You arrest me for protesting in the street. Hey, we have a good reason why we actually need them. So that's why we're asking people to get out of the street. Is it illegal to get out of the street? They could arrest you, but we're asking you guys voluntarily, let's just get on the sidewalks. Because if a car comes through and hits somebody, it's a better way for the government to say we need the feds.
And we do definitely need the feds. We definitely need the feds in here. Because your mayor is terrible. Is giving you terrible orders. You guys should be able to work with ICE. You should be able to work with ICE.
And you could hear somebody in the background chastising the police for giving essentially advice to the Antifa folks. On one argument, you could say, well, they're trying to keep the peace, but they're actually helping them avoid ICE. And they're taking bad advice, apparently, from their leadership. Where is that going to end up? Well, we don't know. But here's a post from Nick Sorter, who was arrested last week and arraigned, but not charged. And he's reposting Donald Trump saying, Chicago's mayor should be in jail for failing to protect the officers. Governor Pritzker, when you have people working against those meant to protect the populace of the cities, something is drastically wrong. Did you have a comment, Todd?
No, you're on a roll.
Okay. Okay. Now let's give me just a moment. I'm going to bring up one more thing here. So
far it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that.
Okay, what did he just say? If people were being killed, if courts were holding us up or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. Are those things happening? The answer is yes. Courts are trying to stand in the way of taking illegal aliens that are in the country illegally and deporting them. They're trying to stand in the way of National Guard being deployed where they need to be, if in fact they need to be. And so he is signifying that, in fact, we might have to rely on something like that. Now, there will be those, I'm going to do a little fortune telling, I think now. There will be those that are going to say, oh, well, this is going to be a civil war. And the answer is no, it's not. This is not us against us. This is us against, funded groups that are there to foment protest, to foment violence, to create violence, to make it look like it's us versus us. And it's not. I will offer that 4 years ago, I had a conversation with some of the best election integrity folks in the country. And even at that time, part of the conversation was ultimately some of these bad guys that have created our issues in election integrity would very much prefer that we end up in a civil war and we end up taking out some of we. We as a group, we as Americans have to prevent that. That is not this fight. This fight is about folks that are working against us. And in fact, were discussed in a meeting in Washington, D.C. earlier today. I'm going to see if I can grab that. If you will take a break with me for a couple of minutes.
While you're doing that, I'm going to, some breaking news right before the show started that
Sure.
There's going to be a Gaza peace deal signed tomorrow. It looks like both sides have approved it. And the first phase, they're calling it, which will be a complete ceasefire, gradual withdrawal of the Israeli army from 70% of the Gaza Strip and simultaneous release of prisoners from both sides. So that is a plus for President Trump. We hope that goes through and we'll stay on it. Back to you.
Wonderful. Okay. As I said earlier today, there was a meeting in the White House, and they talked about $100 million going through various NGOs, not just through Soros, but through Soros along with others, and it being used to fund some of what we're seeing in terms of protests and Antifa and so forth. Some people will recall that 2 years ago, maybe it was 3, there were pictures and video of Antifa yelling for, we're going to quit protesting unless we get our pay. And I've forgotten what town that was in. It was either Seattle or Portland, but I don't recall which now. But literally, these people apparently are getting paid. Let's listen into the comments from this meeting in Washington today.
Just a story about violence and chaos, as you alluded to, Mr. President. This is a money story. And at the Government Accountability Institute, my colleague and I, Peter Schweitzer and our team, we followed the money, and we followed it to the top of what we call the protest industrial complex, Riot Inc. And we found a network of NGOs. It's not just the Soros network, the Open Society network, it's other funding networks, the Arabella funding network, the Tides funding network, Neville Roy Singham and his network, Foreign Cash. And it's also big left-wing funders. Some of them are not citizens of this country. Mr. Hans-Jörg Wyss of Switzerland. They're pouring money into this entire ecosystem. And so I want to share 3 money facts with you about what we call Riot Inc. Number 1, like any corporation, Riot Inc. has many divisions. It doesn't just have the Antifa boots on the ground division. It has PR divisions. It has marketing divisions. It has a very well-funded legal division to get these boots on the ground back on the streets as quickly as possible. But it does have those investors that I mentioned. Number 2, we have identified dozens of radical organizations, not just the decentralized Antifa organizations, but dozens of radical organizations that have received more than $100 million from the Riot Inc. investors. These would be the lawyer groups. These would be the groups that advocate for calling good, honest Americans fascists, etc. And then 3, I think the most shocking thing is that we have found that more than $100 million in U.S. taxpayer funding has flowed into these funding networks, including at least $4 million to these very groups themselves, not just Antifa types, but there was an event in Atlanta called Stop Cop City. Over 60 rioters were charged with domestic terrorism. These groups received money for that from both the billionaire class as well as taxpayer money. So one other thing, this money helps fund the decentralized crowdfunding platforms. These are ways that Antifa, the John Brown Gun Club of Elm Fork, which had links to that attack on the ICE facility, the Socialist Rifle Association, and just because they don't have LLCs or EIN numbers doesn't mean they can't get paid. Some of these funding platforms, crowdfunding platforms, are funded by this network that we call rioting. So, again, I want to thank you for your leadership, for the whole cabinet's leadership on this. We're going to keep following the money and appreciate everything you're doing, sir.
Do you know the name of any of the funders? Do you know the names? Because if you do, I'd like you to give them to Cash or Pam.
Absolutely.
Or Christy.
Yeah, we'll do that.
As soon as you can. That's all of you. Because you probably know the names after a certain period of time. You tend to find out. But these are people that do not have good intention for the country, and that's treasonous probably. So if you could, very important, if you could do that, it would be great. Nobody would know better than you. You'll figure it out.
So after going through what we talked about just a moment ago, I found it to provide incredibly good closure in terms of this is not us against us. This is us against a machine that has been created to create these protests. So when we see these going on, we understand now, or can understand, that this is something that needs to be fought. This is not us against kids that are good American kids. These folks are being paid for, and they are being incented to go create these protests. That's why it is so critical that they be stopped. People who've gotten hurt in the past, they're getting hurt now. It doesn't have to continue. And if Trump has to take very precise action to shut this down, then that probably is what needs to be done. Okay.
Let me jump in there. There's what strikes me, Bill, is the movement, the Overton window has shifted. Trump used some words there, which a year or two ago we would have been shocked if he used. One of them was treason. Mm-hmm. He said that very clearly. I think we're to the point where we're looking, as you said, at this insurrection, and we're going to call it what it is. I mean, that's a huge movement from a year ago. And there's also a lot of military pushback from the bad guys, as you say, inside DOW now. We're dealing with this, and we're going to deal with it next week with Pete Blaber on Ukraine SITREP. But a lot of these flag officers were not happy with Trump's push to basically protect the homeland, as you say. So right. we're gonna beyond this. It's on CDM. It's an important issue. I want to take just one. Do you have something to say? I want to do a quick ad.
We'll go on to one more thing in a few minutes. Go right ahead.
So the wellness company, twc.health/CDM. This is their emergency travel kit. I have used this bad boy many times. I'm going to bring it with me when I go to Beirut later in the month. This is the contagion kit. If you have respiratory issues or worried about, another pandemic, it has the nebulizer, the steroids, everything you would need to deal with that. Make sure you protect your family. Get on the website, twc.health/CDM. Use promo code CDM. You get 10% off. This is the ultimate spike detox if you have somebody who's had a lot of vaccines and may be filled with spike protein in their blood. A lot of different things there. The weight loss, the parasite cleanses, the doctor visits, the memberships. They've just got a lot there. The nutraceuticals. Take a look at it. Spend some time on the website. Great stocking stuffer for someone who's been vaccinated. The ultimate spike detox. So twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM. All right, Bill, back to you.
All right. One more thing before we move on from this notion of what do we have to do? What do we have to be prepared for in order to see this, these fake groups that are being incented to create these problems dealt with appropriately? Well, let's recall that even if, and we're not saying that he's even going to go there, but just even if, Trump needed to deploy National Guard or even military to certain locations to deal with something, it would not be the first time that this has had to happen. If we go back to 1992, during the riots that followed the Rodney King verdict, U.S. Marines, if you recall, were actually deployed in Los Angeles. And that was done by George H.W. Bush, and he invoked the Insurrection Act. So this is not unknown in the past. And it does not mean it's not, we're not moving away from America. But in certain cases, when things get bad enough, certain actions might need to be taken. We're not going to foreshadow what will or will not happen as we sit here tonight. However, it is important to remember that these things in the past have been done and things moved back toward proper order after certain actions were taken. If that's the way it has to go, so be it. But we'll keep that in abeyance for the moment, but keep thinking about the way we started this show. We have to know who we are, and we have to know who the enemy is. And what we've learned in the last half hour gives a much better picture of who the enemies may actually be, and it isn't us. Okay? All right. Let's talk about Mr. Comey. Mr. Comey had a very interesting day today. He was arraigned and pled not guilty. His 2-day trial is set for January 5th, which is very interesting because it coincides with the meeting in which apparently he and Obama and others planned the very things that he lied about in front of Congress. And what was interesting, I found, was that folks like Peter Navarro were very quick to point out the differences in treatment that Mr. Navarro had received when things were when he was being charged with certain things, and the treatment that Comey received today. Let's listen in on this.
Of my situation, misdemeanor for an alleged crime that wasn't, leg irons arrests through Reagan Airport. We learned yesterday from Senator Chuck Grassley's big reveals that they surveilled me. They didn't regard me as armed or dangerous. They just did it as a circus arrest. They had a dozen agents involved in that. I got the mug shot, I got the handcuffs, I got the leg irons, I got the jail cell. It made me sit there for a couple hours, and then the judge and I go out and face the microphones and the music. I didn't have anybody escorting me out the side door. And then you got Comey, okay? It's like felony, up to 10 years in prison, involved in arguably the worst political conspiracy in America's lifetime that stretched all the way from 2016 when he was at the helm through 2024, multiple times to overthrow the president when he was in office or to stop him from getting elected in 2016, 2020, and 2024. And Steve, the central lesson that I have, I gave it at the Republican National Convention in my speech the day I got out of prison, is if we don't hold them accountable, they will do it again. I went to prison so you won't have to. It's not just a book, it's a wake-up call.
Okay, so you can tell that Mr. Navarro was a little less than pleased with the treatment that he got versus Comey, and we'll see how this plays out. There is some concern now that Comey was allowed to enter not apparently into the front door of the courthouse. He was escorted in either a side or back door, was able to avoid much of the press and much of the public. It kind of begs the question, why would that be done given the severity of the things that apparently he's committed or allegedly committed?
We still have some bad actors in DOJ. I mean, they tried to put out that there was a mistake and there was a summons instead of an arrest was checked. That's BS. I mean, they knew what they were doing. Somebody allowed this to happen.
Somebody or somebody's still apparently are acting in a nefarious manner.
Yes.
I think you mentioned you had something from Candace Owens that you wanted to
share.
So would you like to do that?
let's move into that. We have some sources inside Turning Point, and I can tell you there's a lot of people very concerned about this organization right now, who's taking it over, where it's going to go, where the money is, where the money's going, where the money's coming from. We've been getting death threats, and there may be some connection to the whole Charlie Kirk thing. We'll leave that alone for the minute, but down the road we'll maybe bring that into the open. But here is a short clip from Candace Owens on the assassination. We're not pointing fingers, we're not accusing anybody, but just what we are gonna do is give the evidence as it's released. So this was interesting to me.
He told these people, I think they're going to kill me. Okay. He did
I'm gonna
not
start
express
over.
that to me. People told me off record. Two people who have this in a written communication from Charlie. One who is a Turning Point USA donor, and I would say very much one of the white knights in this. The very day before Charlie Kirk died, he expressed that he thought he was going to be killed. He told these people, I think they're going to kill me. Okay. He did not express that to me. So I am telling you this based off the testimony of three people. And I am saying this because I hope that these people who I think are good will be inspired to come forward with that. Now, again, those conversations I had were off record. I honor that. If I say it's off record, it stays off record. But I'm hoping that watching what I am doing and feeling the energy that is rising across the world for people who want to know what the heck happened on 9/10, that, they will be brave and they will say, yeah, Charlie did the day before he died think that he was going to be killed, and maybe tell us, who is they? Well, for once and for all, who is they? Who is the they that he thought were going to kill him?
So who is they? That's the big question, and we'll leave that question unanswered for the moment. But I think in time we will know who they is, Bill.
I think that's right. And it seems like the theme for tonight is indeed playing out. Who is they? Who are the enemies? And who are we? Who are we really? And the people that we trusted the most, who we expected them to be. And in some cases, it's now very clear that they have not been. We mentioned earlier that Comey was arraigned today. One of the things I meant to play and wanted to use this to really underscore the depth of the problem that Comey is facing. First of all, he's only been charged with a couple of things. Many people have presented this as these are placeholder charges. They can always be added to later on. And I would very frankly, knowing what I've heard in the last 72 hours, I would be surprised if by January 5th, they are not supplemented with additional charges. But here's an example of what Comey's testimony was going back to when they were trying to get the country to believe that there was this Russian plot that didn't exist, but that they were trying to present and get everybody to buy into.
Foreign government that using technical intrusion and lots of other methods tried to shape the way we think, we vote, we act. That is a big deal. And people need to recognize it. It's not about Republicans or Democrats. They're coming after America, which I hope we all love equally. They want to undermine our credibility in the face of the world. They think that this great experiment of ours is a threat to them, and so they're going to try to run it down and dirty it up as much as possible. That's what this is about, and they will be back because we remain, as difficult as we can be with each other, we remain that shining city on the hill, and they don't like it.
What a bunch of garbage. I mean, he's just projecting like crazy. That's exactly what he's doing.
That's exactly right. And what strikes me is, and we've said this quite a number of times in the past year and a half, these people are actors.
Yes.
And they are good actors when it comes to presenting a face that on its surface appears credible, believable. They can string this stuff out and lay it out on the table like it was just the easiest thing in the world. How they do it, I honestly don't know, because you would think that conscience alone would keep people from saying such incredulous, untruthful things, and they know it. They know it when they're saying it.
Well, I think we're getting to the point where the mask is cracking, though, Bill.
I hope so. But I mean, we need to keep that in mind, that even though somebody can, we've said it in a number of ways, don't listen just to what people say, no matter who it is. look at what they do, look at their actions, and how what they say is borne out over time. That kind of brings us to the next section. Now, we're not here to support any given country's proposition or anything else, but we did hear this week more worrisome foreshadowing about risk to America, and it caused me, and it's causing others, to look back and say, haven't we heard this before? And how did it play out when we've heard it in the past? And so I wanted to share this. Again, we are not taking sides regarding what's going on in the Middle East. You just said that there's an announcement that we may be very close to a peace deal. We applaud that for all parties. We hope that all the killing, all the hurtfulness, all the violence will cease, and that peace can finally rest across the entire Middle East. But as we think about what we're being warned about, we just wanted to at least share this and say, have we been warned in the past, and has it been based in reality, or is it based in something else? Let me go ahead and share this.
For attaining this goal is getting extremely close. And Iran, by the way, is also outpacing Iraq in the development of ballistic missile systems that they hope will reach the eastern seaboard of the United States within 15 years. By next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb. The foremost sponsor of global terrorism could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons. That would place a militant Islamic terror regime weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year.
So we've heard this before, and yet again, just in this past week, we heard this.
Ballistic missiles that are intercontinental ballistic missiles for 8,000 kilometer range. What does that mean? They add another 3,000 kilometers, and they've got under their atomic guns, the New York City in target, Washington, Boston, Miami, Mar-a-Lago. Okay? So that is a very great danger. You don't want to be under the nuclear gun of these people.
So again, the same warning. The question is, do we take it differently than we would have before? Didn't we just get through destroying down to, tiny little pieces anything Iran was doing with regard to nuclear weapons?
Well, the point is, like you said, we're not taking sides here, but we are definitely taking America's side in more wars in the Middle East. And we are going to be, that's our red line, Bill, at CDM. We're going to be vocal. We're going to scream up and down. There's the song 99 Red Balloons. Here I am sitting pretty in this ash that was a city. We want to be the ones before that happens to say no more wars. And we're going to be very, very, very vocal on that and shame anyone who tries to, including our leaders. Back to you.
Okay. All right. And then lastly, we'll give a quick update on Georgia. So a number of people in past months have been calling for action by the Georgia GOP with regard to what has been learned regarding First Liberty building and loan, and what the SEC is calling a Ponzi scheme, which has built apparently $140 million and maybe more from folks, and is now apparently reported to be across as many as 38 states. What's been troubling to folks within the GOP in Georgia is that some members of the Frost family continue to hold leadership positions in various regards in county, district, and state level positions. And that raises the ire and raises the concern of many. They have, folks have been asking for a meeting of the executive committee, the state committee, and this to be addressed. Many in the GOP believe that these people, for the moment at least, should not hold positions of leadership. It sends a terrible message when it is known that many folks, perhaps hundreds, have lost substantial money, some their entire life savings, to folks that were targeting, according to the SEC and other investigative authorities, they were targeting Christians, parish goers, and retired folks. And those are many of the people that lost money. That does not send the right message to folks that say, well, wait a minute, do I even want to be part of an organization that will allow these people to continue to serve in leadership capacities? Does this make any sense? We just learned today that a meeting of the Georgia GOP State Committee, and I'm told late today, the Executive Committee as well, will occur on Monday, October 13th. And we are hoping that the leadership of the GOP, including Josh McCoon and the rest of the leadership and the state committee, will take up these questions and concerns and take appropriate action, because when the state committee is in session, they have a very high degree of power and may, I am told, command the executives, including Josh McCoon, actions to be taken. So we hope that in fact plays out, and we will see and report what happens following those meetings.
Okay. There's also, we got from a joint contact of ours, I saw a post come through that the Fulton County's approved a committee for reparations or something like that. I mean, that's just insanity. We'll try to dig into that a little bit. Don't forget I'll be on the Skiff tomorrow at 10 a.m. Monday through Friday Eastern. We'll be in Beirut later in the month, and we're going to have a lot of guests over the next few weeks on protecting Christians, primarily in Africa. We've got people coming in from the Congo, from Nigeria, and other places, and it's going to be really interesting to find out what is going on with our Christian brothers and sisters on the continent and in the Middle East. So look forward to that. That's all I got, Bill.
All right, that's great. We will be back next time on Sunday at 2 with the next segment of the Georgia show. And we'll look forward to seeing the reporting that you will do on the Skiff tomorrow morning. So take care. Thanks for being with us.